And you can still hear me just fine, right?
I can. There was that. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Storytime Friday. Joey, I think that they got a glimpse of you in the live. There was a 20-second delay. I'm sorry. Happy day, everybody. Happy day indeed. Let me just do a few little things to myself set up so that I can do this thing and figure this out. Joey.
Yes.
Oh, that's an old, okay. When you see the panel, do you see just me on screen or do you see
only you on screen?
Huh?
I see only you.
Okay.
Right. Well, I mean, on my Zoom, of course, I have the little square of where I am, but on the live,
right.
I see.
Okay. I wanted to make sure it wasn't doing a split screen.
Yeah.
Your camera on. Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Storytime Friday. Thank you very much for joining us. I am Jessica Ross, and I'm Misfit Sanctuary. I am a Theta healing practitioner, spiritual counselor. What else do I do? I'm an ordained metaphysical minister, a BQH quantum healer, and this is my thing, and I'm joined with my lovely friend Joey. Hi, Joey.
Oh.
Joey's joining me today. She's being my partner in crime because we work really well together, and she's going to help me tell my story. So I've encouraged multiple times to write my book, and for a long time I was not at a place where I could write it. And then I went into a space where, for my own healing, I had to stop telling my story so that I could recreate a new story. And I did, and my turned around, and everything is awesome and wonderful and amazing. And now I'm ready to go back and tell my story of how I got to where I am today. But I have a hard time remembering it because I stopped telling it. And also, it's been a lot. It's been a lot. And sometimes it's just easier to remember things and talk about it when I have a friend joining me. But Joey also joins me on Topic Tuesdays. She is an Akashic Records reader. She is amazing and brilliant and has so much to offer. So you can also catch us on Tuesdays, most Tuesdays. There may be some Tuesdays coming up where I might not be able to do it, but
adjusting.
Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And every week we pick a new topic. Next week's is going to be talking about the purge, which is like kind of a natural consequence that happens while we raise our vibration, and things that no longer are in vibration with our higher reality cycle out, and we go through like purge. And we'll talk about other side effects of the work. But today we're going to start. It's our first story time, and we're going to start telling stories. So thank you so much for being here, Joey.
Yeah, just one quick note. Next Tuesday is the one that we are going to have to miss. So our next day after that will be the 25th.
Okay. And actually one that I may need to miss.
Oh, okay. Yep.
We're going to figure out the scheduling.
You can
check on my Facebook page. You can check my business page, Misfit Sanctuary, or you can check my personal page, Jessica Lynn Ross. And I'll keep you notified. If you would like to receive mails to stay up to date, you can put your email here, and I can put it in my database, or you can go to my website, misfit underscore sanctuary. And is it underscore or is it? I should know my own. But it's misfit. Let me just double check. It's misfit dash, not underscore. Misfit-sanctuary.com. And you can sign up for my email list to stay up to date on all the fun stuff we're doing, because this is just the beginning, guys. This is just the beginning. Topic Tuesdays and Storytime Fridays. This is just the beginning. We're going to be doing so much more. And so I'd love for you to join us. I'm excited to see where this goes, Joey.
I know, me too.
I'm really excited to see where this goes. And I just want to take a moment of like deep appreciation for joining me. I don't think you really can comprehend the service that you're providing me by joining me with this, and how this is going to be able to set me up to write my book, which will hopefully set me up for more things. And I want to bring you on the journey the whole way. And I'm just really, really grateful that you're here.
Oh, me too. It's my pleasure. Absolutely. I mean, this is the stuff that makes my heart sing. So thanks for that.
Yay, yay, yay. You're welcome. All right. So I can feel myself avoiding.
Yep. Okay. So let's start at the very beginning, my dear. So where were you conceived? Just kidding. Where were you born?
Well,
actually, no, where you were conceived.
I was conceived, that's actually like a good question. I'm like, where was I conceived? I'm sure I was conceived and born in the same place. It's a very small town in Western Pennsylvania, Windber, 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 Pennsylvania. It's about an hour south of Pittsburgh. And it is tiniest little town, man. You blink and you're through it. Like,
what's the population?
Or just
what's grown up?
That is a good question. When I was younger, it felt like the entire population was my family, because my entire family lived there. My grandfather had 22 brothers and sisters. And wow. So there was like a lot of extended family. I have lots and lots of cousins and lots of great aunts and great uncles. And we would everybody, I feel like everyone lived in Windber. Wow.
So and it looks like officially the population, supposedly, from 2021 was 3,893 people. That's pretty small. It
is. And it was much smaller, of course, in 19 when I was born. Yeah. And it's like interesting town because everything is segregated, kind of like when you go to Chicago, there's there's tons of Hungarians. We're Hungarian, Czechoslovakian, and Irish. And so you had the part over here who are the Hungarians, and then you have the Irish over here, and then you have the Italians over here, and you have, so it was interesting. And they even have a festival every year of culture where everyone comes together and shares food from their heritage. And as you walk through, it's like one street that, and it's so funny because you walk in and they have the Irish first, and everyone's getting drunk, and there's lively music going on, and you're like, yeah, this is awesome. And then you walk past the Irish, and it's just boring the whole rest of the way.
It's like I was ready for a good time, but everybody else is lame.
Yeah, so people walk down and they'll get the food from the Hungarian, and then they'll bring it back to the Irish to chill out and listen to music. And that's kind of how, so that's kind of how I remember it. And it's just a very small, very behind the times town. I used to say it took the rest of the world would get something, and it would be 5 more years before Windber would get stuff. So it was a really small town. My entire family lived there. So we had my mom's side of the family and then my dad's side of the family. And my mom's side of the family, my grandpa and grandma, everyone were alcoholics.
Oh.
All alcoholics. And parents were all alcoholics. And so it was always a party at my grandparents' house. Every weekend at my mom's side of the family, everyone together. And it was like joyous toxicity. You know, everyone in the family played an instrument.
Oh yeah, that's a party.
It was a party. Yeah.
Never.
It was definitely a party, and we would get together every weekend. The entire family would come to grandma and grandpa's house, and we did polka, and they would get 2 kegs, and everyone would get drunk and make food, and like, so, you know, it's interesting, like, before you're young enough to see the toxicity of what that is.
Oh, it sounds amazing, right? When you
it was totally, you know, some of my favorite memories are dancing the polka. My grandpa.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
My grandpa was Irish on my mom's side, and my grandma was Hungarian, Czechoslovakian, and my great grandma, my Baba, they lived in the duplex, and my Baba lived on one side of the duplex, and my grandparents lived on the duplex. And then my great aunt and my cousins lived right across the street. And then my aunt and other cousins lived right down the street. And then on the street over here was more family. I mean, it was, so in Mine 40, Wimber is a mining town. And so there's a coal mine at the end of the that we used to go and climb. And it was not rich, you know, like, not to say that there weren't people that lived way up on the mountain that had wealth, but the town was like old miner families.
Yeah.
We grew up in
its own culture too. The whole mining.
Yeah. I've never really thought about that, but yeah, it really is its own culture, and it's its own type of person, its own, there's that tough struggle mentality, really. The really hardworking, blue collar kind of families. And then on my dad's side of the family, my grandmother was not an alcoholic, but my grandfather was. And there were 5, they had 5 children, including my dad. And they owned a hotel and bar in Windsor. And so I have fond memories of being raised in a bar. I was just raised around partying and alcohol. And it was, you know, and my mom was an alcoholic and a drug addict. And so life was a big party, you know, like it was, and because of that, it was pretty hard from the beginning. It was hard for my mom. Obviously, I don't remember what happened from being a baby. Oh, Betsy joined again. Hi, Betsy. I miss you, honey. Thank you for being here. I hope that you're doing well. So what I do know is that my mom and dad, they were very young. My mom was 21 when she had me. And my dad was around the same age. And He was also an alcoholic and drug addict, and not necessarily mentally stable, and quite violent. And my mother, so like trigger warning, I feel like I need to say like trigger warning for my entire story. So if you're gonna join and listen to story time, I want you to know like it could be triggering. There's a lot that's really triggering, and I'm gonna get into detail about it because the purpose of these videos is to help me write my book. So trigger warning.
So if it's not for you, that's okay. We have the other ones, but we're going to be brutally honest with ourselves here.
Yes, absolutely. And take care of you. So my mom was really abused by my grandma. It was bad. She was, and like I remember asking my mom, like, why was Bubba abusive? Like, is it a long? And I understand Bubba was not. I mean, she was a tough Hungarian woman. She came over to avoid the war. And I remember her telling me stories of when she was 7 years old, she got a job at the salt and pepper factory and walk, 5 miles in the morning at night so that she could buy her pair of shoes. Like she did it barefoot so that she could buy her first pair of shoes. Hard, she was a tough woman, but she wasn't abusive from what I understand. And so I don't know where my grandma got it, but my grandma, I heard multiple stories from my mom and my about how abusive my grandma was. And apparently my grandpa was not abusive, but like allowed it. And so like, abusive by proxy.
Absolutely.
And but he was my favorite person. Like when I was younger, I think he had gone in and out of like drinking. And I don't personally have any bad memories of him until I was like older and saw he was having problems with alcohol. But I know he had definitely had his own problems, but he wasn't the abuser.
Okay.
From what I understand. And so my mom tried to leave home early, because of the abuse that she was getting at the home. My mom was the youngest of 4. And my aunt everyone got out as soon as they could. And so my mom was kind of like receiving a lot of the brunt of it, being the baby. And so she moved into the hotel with my dad. His name was Wayne. And and so they stayed there, and then they got pregnant, and my mom told me repeatedly throughout my life how he, wanted to abort me.
God.
And it was out of fear because my biological dad was abusive. And so so I don't think while she was pregnant things were great. I know she was smoking cigarettes and I know she was drinking. And there was just a lot of trauma. It was just nonstop kind of violence, apparently. And um and so I was born in Wimber Hospital in July 3rd, 1980. Um, the first thing I remember my mom telling me was that I was two, the violence had got so bad that my mom and dad got divorced. And my mom ran away to Virginia Beach, and she would tell me this story. We lived in Virginia Beach, and we were up on, some floor, and we had a little balcony. And so she got from the beach and brought it up in a little pool and made a sandbox for me on the back. And she would wash dishes while, like, right outside the window, she would wash in the sandbox. And she said I took this bucket of sand, and I was putting sand in the bucket. I'm 2 years old and I pick up this bucket, and I just like, and like dump the hole. And, she freaks out, and then she runs out, and I start turning blue, and she's like freaking out, and she's by my feet and like banging the back of my back, trying to get me to spit up the sand. And I spit up the sand, and that's like the first memory I have, not of my own memory, but of her telling me something whenever.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. The first time
I almost died.
You've been trying to take yourself off this freaking planet since you got here. What's up?
I'm telling you, it was I came in with that program for sure. For a long time. And then I don't remember how it happened. I think my dad was really good at making up, right? He would be abusive. It was, the narcissist, and
very
charismatic. Was really codependent, and so he was very charismatic. My mom just so in love with him. There was such a trauma bond. It was intense. And so somehow we ended up back in Wimber, and we got this little place. It's not there anymore, but it was next to a bar called Tangie's, and we had a little 1-room apartment, and that's where I have my first memories, like my own first memories.
And that's, you said, around 5-ish?
Yeah, around 4. I think I was like 4. Probably. Okay.
What do you know how old you were when you guys moved back to Wimber? Was that like 4, or was that before that?
I think it was before that, because the other memory I remember her and my aunt and everybody telling me was there was this moment. I mean, this may have been what moved us to Virginia Beach, or this may have happened when we got back. That I'm not sure of the timing on this, but apparently, so my dad would break in and take me and then leave me places. So he had kidnapped me and then me by a dumpster.
Oh my God.
I was 2. So I think that's what made us move. I think that was, so I'm not sure how old we were when I got back. But I remember being in this apartment, and I mean, it was tiny, but I was with my mom, and I, went to see my grandparents all the time. I was with my grandparents all the time because my mom was either working or drinking. And so I spent a lot of time with my grandparents.
That was her parents, right?
Her parents, yeah. And I went to my dad's too, but I don't have many memories. The memories I have of them are like going to the bar and the hotel, and I would go in, and my grandma knew I loved Michael Jackson. And so she had all this Michael Jackson albums on the jukebox, and she would let me play the jukebox. And then I would get uh, peanuts from the little coin thingy. And I would go and I would sit and I would open my peanuts, and you know, the little baby in it, like the little seed in the peanut.
Oh, uh-huh.
I would separate them. I would make a pile of those and then the pile of the actual peanuts.
Oh gosh.
And I would go through and I would make this big pile of like the little, I don't even know what it's called. Like it's like the little seed when you crack the actual peanut. And then because I thought they tasted good, like they had a different taste than the rest of the peanuts. I don't know if it's true or not. That's in my kid brain. And I would play Pac-Man, like she had some arcade games, and it was a cool bar, you know. I mean, as a kid, like, I mean, I remember going and I would get like a Shirley Temple. All of my memories when I was younger, like the other place we would go to was called the Town Tavern. I went there with my mom, and this guy Joe worked behind the counter, and you know, my jaw kind of like, well, I talk, it like moves, but his was always like this. And so he always talked like this, and he had this really funny accent, and I don't know what the hell happened to his face, but that's what I remember. And he would give me, I would get red pistachios. That was my treat. If I sat and my mom could drink, and I would eat my pistachios, and we would get pork sliders. And you know, my mom she was a butterfly, so she knew and the town was so small, and she had grown up there, and like, so we just knew everybody everywhere. And we lived next to a bar. And so I remember I would wake up in the middle of the night at like 4 or 5 years old, and my mom wouldn't be there. And I walk next door to the bar, and he would be there, and they would bring me in and put me to sleep on the pool.
Oh, wow.
And like, that was my life. Like, I was like just surrounded by drinking. It honestly wasn't until I was like almost in my 20s where I started to realize, like, oh, like really not everybody lives this life, you know?
Yeah.
So that was, you know, and even my babysitter, she was in Mine 40, the neighborhood that my grandparents lived in. And they owned the bar and hotel in that mine. And so even when I went to my babysitters, I was at a bar. So everywhere I went,
wow,
it was a bar or a party.
Yeah.
My grandmother drank, oh, I wish I could remember the beer, but it was the tall cans.
Okay.
Drink a case a day.
Gosh.
Like,
that's expensive.
I don't know how she lived to be as old as she was. Like, thankfully later in the story she got sober. But yeah, it was just, you know, it was just life, and everyone was always wasted, and there was always drama. There was always drama. And I remember being really young. This is bullshit. And you know, oh, and I remember going to, so my grandma on my dad's side, my grandma and my pap on my dad's side, they had a house on the river, this like cabin house, and it's a summer thing, but now my grandma lives there full time. She's like 97.
Oh, wow.
But they built it up over time. And so memories I have of being with my dad's family were me getting to go to the river, because my mom didn't let me go with my dad very often. And when I did, I think the rule was there had to be family around. And that's what it seems like. I don't know that for sure, but that's what it seems like. And so, because the memories are going to the river, and I would go fishing with my dad or my Uncle Brian or my Aunt Tracy. But even there was drinking. Everyone was drinking. There's always drugs and there's always drinking, other than my grandma on that side. So yeah, Betsy, my role models were the it was intense. It was, it was intense. And yeah, they had great qualities about them. But they were also alcoholic. My aunt Debbie, my mom's sister, got out and kind of got her life straight early. She went into nursing school. She was like the first one to pull herself out of the abusive environment. And she still drank for a while, but like she's been married for, God, I don't know, like 40 at this point. And she had 3 kids. One of them passed away when he was 6. But she was like the first role model of what it could look like to live differently. And I remember going like and visiting and being like, wow, this is so different. Like, and I remember feeling uncomfortable, and I felt like around her presence, because it was so different. It was just so different compared to all the other families. And so, so my family, neither of my families had the best, what's that? Like, they had a bad rap, especially the Ross side of my family. My dad's side of the family was violent and chaotic and, not healthy at all. I'm trying to really like paint the picture of the family. I think that's pretty thorough.
Well, and that was Irish family too, right? So they were pretty rowdy already. And
yeah. So my dad's side is Scotch Irish.
Yeah.
And both my grandparents are Scotch Irish. And then on my mom's side, my pap is Irish, and then my grandmother is Hungarian Slovak.
Yeah.
So it was party. They're all very similar, and
people usually don't hesitate to be violent. That's kind of part of the culture.
Yeah, and violence was just like, not that it was accepted, but it was the norm. I know my mom had told me that there had been several attempts at intervening and getting my mom away from my dad, but the hook that they had was just really it was really intense. My mom said to the day she died, he was the man that she loved,
Wow.
So then my memories kick in when I was about 4, and I was at the babysitter a lot. I was either at the babysitter or I was at my grandparents' house. Growing up in the 80s, there was never any supervision.
Absolutely. It was great. It's so different I mean, you could just walk down the street as a small child and everybody's like, oh yeah, don't worry, they probably know where they're going. I'm sure it's fine.
It's so funny. Just a little side note, Lucas and Micah, my teen, they've been coming and telling me, like, they showed me this meme and they bring it up all the time. They're like, Mom, you teenaged so hard that now we are not allowed to teenage. Yeah, because I see what that gets. So Lucas especially, he'll say all the time, like, my mom teenaged so hard, I'm not allowed to do that stuff. It's like, it's not that, it's just we had no supervision. There was never any supervision. I mean, when I was at my grandparents' house, you know, I mean, they would check to make sure, and it was supervision, but in a different way. It was the whole neighborhood watched. Like, I could get a spanking by the old lady down the street if she saw me doing something that I wasn't supposed to be doing.
Oh, dang.
You know, and yeah, and there were spanking galores, right? Like, so I guess to speak on that the whole spoil the rod or spare the rod, spoil the child, you know, nobody hesitated to slap me or hit me in any way. I think the only person that never hit me was my pap is my grandpa on my mom's side.
Gotcha.
We had Pappy Sandy, which was my dad, and then I had my pap, who was my mom's dad. And he was just the light of my life as a child. He was my breath of fresh air in all of the chaos. He was funny, and he would tell these amazing stories. He had these scars on 2 X's on his stomach from I think an appendix operation, some sort of operation. And he would put on his Irish accent, he would sit me on his lap, and he would show me his scars, and he would go, oh, wee little Colleen. I can't even do an Irish accent. Oh, did I tell you about the day that the mosquitoes were sword fighting on my stomach? And he would tell me this, and I had heard this story a zillion times, but I'd be like, no, you never told me, Pap. And he'd be like, oh, come here, wee little lassie, let me tell you the story. And and he would tell me this elaborate story about how the mosquitoes were sword fighting, and then he ended up getting cut, and he had all kinds of stories. One of the things I want to do is get with my aunt, because she's the only one left. Everyone else is dead. We'll get into that later, but and I have so much respect for my Aunt Debbie. She has found every single person in the family dead. She's the one that found everyone.
Oh my God.
Not all at one time, obviously, but
right.
She had some sort of karma. We'll get into that later. So, but she probably has more stories that Pap used to say. That's the main one. And then he had the story about Red Riding Hood, and I don't really remember that, but he was always telling these, like, you know, long tales. Yeah. He was awesome, and he was fun. Like, he would play with me, and I had a piggy bank that was a duck. It was a duck bank, and he would come over and he would bring me change, and I'd sit on his lap and he'd give me the change. And for like the small coins, he would go quack quack, but then big coins, he'd go quack 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 quack. And it was just fun, you know, like as a little kid, it was just so fun. He was so fun, and he would put like popcorn balls on the tree every year so we could eat popcorn balls for Christmas. And you know, like, I want to
about an example of a good male. Like, you actually, you know what's funny? In my life, it was also my mother's father. He was so sweet and kind to my grandmother, and I was just like, and they had such a great relationship. And to this day, just that relationship and the way he treated her is like, wow, a man can be good. It's, it's really, I love that you had that though, because I know you probably didn't have a lot of it. So it's nice that you had.
No. And I didn't know this until much later, but him and my grandma did not have a healthy relationship.
Sure.
As a child, again, you don't see. So when I was younger, I would sleep over all the time. I would come down the stairs and they would be up from like 4:30 in the morning because they were old. They were always old. Like I never remember them being young. They were always old. And they would be sitting at the table reading their newspaper. My grandma would be curling her hair and they'd be smoking their cigarettes and drinking their coffee. And I would come down and my pap, here's another thing my pap did. He would go, oh, good morning, my wee little lassie, and he'd get up and he'd come over and he'd, scoop me up, or I'd go sit on his lap for a minute. And then he would go, would you like some cereal? And I'd be like, yeah. And we would go over and he would get the cereal. He'd put me up on the counter and he'd get the cereal and he'd pour it. And then he would get 2 spoons and he would get a little spoon and a big spoon. And he would go, I'm going to give you the big spoon because you have a big mouth. And I'm going to take the little spoon because I have an itty mouth. And I'd be like, no, Pap, your mouth is way bigger than mine. And he's like, no, it's so funny. He did.
What was his name?
What'd you say?
His name, or what was his name?
What was his name? Pap. Don. Donald.
Oh.
I think it was Don. Oh, Donald Boyle. But I think they called him Don.
Okay.
D-O-N. I'm pretty sure. Hi, Melinda. Thank you for being here. I'm glad that you're enjoying this. I'm glad that you're enjoying story time. It means so much to me that you guys are here. So yeah, and they were just, I have so many stories. When he was mad at you, the way he would say he was mad is he would go, hey, if you don't knock that up, I'm going to jump down your throat and swallow you from the inside out. And like, as a little kid, you're like, can he do that? Like, can he really do that? And if he got really upset, he'd be like, all right, back up. I'm going to get a running start and I'm going to run and jump, open your mouth. I'm going to jump down. Like, no, I'll stop. I'm
sorry. Dang, that's funny. It's like just horrifying enough that as a child, you're like, oh, I better stop. This is
serious. And then I started, later in life when I started nannying, I did similar things with the kids too. I would like make funny little threats that were just funny. They're like on the edge of, well, that's funny. You can't do that, but can you? Like, it's so effective, It was a great way to like communicate, like, hey, stop what you're doing without being like, meh, So I just appreciate that. Yeah. And so he was the light of my life. And the rest of it was kind of just chaos. Everything was chaos. And I just remember, I mean, like it was so bad. We would be at the apartment and my dad would come and try to break the door down. And like, I have this one memory where he kicks in the bottom panel and he's like, gets down on the floor and he looks through and he's all crazed. And like, it reminds me of that moment in The Shining where he axes through the door and he's like, here's Johnny. Like, that was the level of terror that we felt. And like, our apartment was really strange. So it was a 1-bedroom apartment, but then there was like a door with stairs to go down into the boiler room of the whole apartment because everything was heated by coal. And so in order to get down to the boiler room, the landlord would have to pass through our apartment, and which didn't happen often, but in the time, the landlord would allow I think it was his brother, who was a severe alcoholic and drug addict, to live in the basement to keep the furnace going. So he would shovel coal. And so I have this memory, again, trigger warning, where my dad is like coming, and it was my mom and her friend Tracy, and my dad comes and he's like beating the door in, and I always had a go bag ready for running. Like that's the life. That's the life we lived, was like you have to have a go bag because at any moment, you know, you could have to run from your dad. And it was an odd thing because though he was so abusive, I remember loving him so much and like just wanting him to wanting to be with him, even though I saw the horrible things he did. You know, it's like it's that trauma bond. And this one day in particular, it says my internet is unstable. So
okay.
I
can see you still. So I'll just let you know because I'm still watching the live. I'll let you know if it gets weird.
Okay, because it's raining here.
Okay.
So we're in the apartment, my mom, her friend Tracy, and I, and dad comes pounding on the door, and it's like everybody stops moving. And I just remember like looking at my mom and looking at Tracy and seeing the look of like, and it's like, you know, quiet, and he's just like banging and he's screaming, I know you're in there and I can hear you guys and yada yada yada. I can see you through the window, and everybody's like not saying anything. And then he's banging and banging, and then he starts breaking down the door, which I don't know how many times they had to replace this door. And so mom looks at me and she's like, go hide in the stairwell. So I go hide in that little stairwell that goes down to the boiler room. And I have this really vivid memory of being in the stairwell. I'm holding my go bag, and I look down, and there's this hobo down there, you know, covered in soot, got this kind of top hat looking thing on, looked like my memory has done this, is he looks like exactly like a hobo, like rosy cheek, rosy nose, covered in soot, soiled clothes, and he's down at the bottom and he's looking up at me, and the look that he's giving me is this look of like helplessness, of like, I don't know what to do. He was probably drunk himself, you know, and I'm looking at this adult who's just letting this happen. I'm looking at my mom and Tracy with the same thing of like, I can't help you. I'm just a little kid. I don't know what's going on. I remember being so scared. And then my dad made it in, and the door was like busted open, or not. The door that I was behind wasn't shut completely. It was a little crack open. And so through the crack, I see my dad come in. And I thought he had killed both of them. I see him picking up one of them, I can't remember who it was, and like throwing them over a chair and watching them bend back. I don't know how their back didn't break, and just tossing them around like rag dolls. And I just remember like watching it, and I remember that like that was the first time where I like really vividly, I remember just all of my feelings. And it was like watching a movie. Like there was no emotional presence. This is important for the story in the future. I remember feeling an energy come to me, and I thought it was an angel. And just having this moment of like this guy down there who's a drunk and can't help me, and then I'm helpless and can't help them. And I don't remember what happened after that. I kind of blanked after shutting down. But that was one of the last situations with my dad before we moved to California. But before we move on to that, another part of the story that is I want to make sure I highlight was also I'm being at my babysitter's. So this is the morning again. I didn't have proper guidance. And
do you know how old your babysitter was at the time?
I think she was like 19. Well, it was really Stella, the lady that owned the bar, and she was the babysitter. So it was her daughter.
Okay.
But it was really Stella that was babysitting, and she was amazing. I have any bad memories of her. I used to walk down to her house even when she wasn't babysitting me and spend time. She was loving and kind and generous and I don't have any bad memories of her, but because there was a lack of running a bar, and she had her own daughters, and I don't know if she took care of other kids, I can't remember, but then she took care of me. And from the ages of 3 to 5, her daughter was molesting. And I want to talk about it because I think that for a few reasons, there's so much information out there about men being predators. And, it's not just men. And women can be predators too. And at the same time, it's still such a hard situation for me because it was wrong, right? It was wrong. You don't ever do that. And then there's this part of me that has compassion because she probably went through that herself. Somebody did that to her. I don't know. I don't know if that's true though. That's just maybe something I tell myself to find compassion. But it was never violent. And I never even realized it was wrong because we were playing games. Yeah. We were just, oh, you want to play a game? Yeah. And this was the game that we played, and it was our secret game. And I'm 3 and 5 years old, so I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it went on forever. Well, not forever, but if feels like forever as a little kid. And then
it's a long time when you're that old. Holy mother.
Yeah. And then and I'm gonna like, okay. The hard part of it is because as a kid who was going through all abuse, there was a part of me that I didn't know it was wrong, and it didn't hurt, and it felt like attention.
Yes, absolutely.
It felt like attention, and I thought it was, and like it messed me up for years, because that like did something in my brain where I was like, oh, this is what love is. And I made this connection between love and sexuality.
Yeah.
And I didn't know it was wrong, and until her sister walked in one day and saw her doing something to me, and like she was like, what are you doing? And I knew, because of that response, I remember going, oh no, this is right, we're doing something wrong. And then like shame and fear and confusion and just like bleh, all the just, and that happened around the same time that my dad did that and came in and almost killed my mom. He had her in the hospital so many times. And so at 5 years old, life was too much.
Yeah.
It's too much. And
so her sister walked in on y'all. Did she tell anybody? Did it come to light? Did it become no? Okay, so she the secret too.
No, and I actually like blocked it out.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't remember until I was 12. No, I was older than that. I don't remember how old I was when I remember. Maybe as we're going through the story, it'll come to me. But I feel like maybe I was like around 15, because I was living in this one apartment. So I must have been around 15. And even when I did tell my mom, first I think that she was sexually abused herself, and I think it was so hard for her to like, that like, you're making it up.
Yeah.
Like, that didn't happen. You're making that up. I think like she couldn't handle the her responsible for putting me in the care of someone that did that, or whose daughter did that. So she refused at first, and then that messed me up too.
Yeah,
but
that's gaslighting but it happens a lot, unfortunately. When I know a lot of people, when they try and talk to their parents, if they're in denial, they just won't even admit it.
I can't imagine, like, if my children came to me and said something like that, the rage that I would feel, oh my good God. So, but eventually we talk about it, and she was like, do you want to do something about it? And the statute of limitations had already gone up, and so there really wasn't anything I could do about it. And so Betsy's asking, did the abuse stop at that time? So what stopped the abuse was we moved.
Yeah.
At that time, nobody knew I was being molested, but everything with my dad was getting worse. Like he was going to kill my mom if we didn't get the fuck out of there. And so that's when my stepdad comes into the picture. His name is Craig. My mom had dated his best friend Gary for a while. And I never felt like Gary liked me when I was younger. He was very distant. And as I talked to him as an adult, he was explaining that it was my he was trying to keep at bay because she was so toxic. And so he didn't really want to let her in. And that's what that was. But as a kid, I remember being like, why doesn't this guy want to be around me? It's so weird, And so my mom had dated Gary, and so she knew my stepdad, Craig, and he was a nice guy. He had served in the army for a brief period of time, and he worked for IBM as a multimedia graphics designer. He had a really great job. And he had, so for a few years and they became friends. He ended up getting a job in California. IBM moved him out to California, and he offered my mom to just come live over there, like as friends. Like, you have to get away from Wimber. Like, Wayne is going to kill you, and what's going to happen with your daughter. And so just come and live in California. And Joey and I were talking earlier, because she's about 45 minutes to an hour away from Milpitas, California, which is where we moved. And so because we left the state from Pennsylvania to California, that's why the abuse stopped. Yes. Bless my stepdad's heart and soul. Like,
Yes.
he is an angel in my story. And so we moved there. We moved when I remember, I think I was about 6. And we moved, and it was a total different life. Like, we went from poverty to, I was like, holy shit, we're rich, right? Yeah. Had a big house with like multiple rooms, 2 rooms. We had like a big kitchen. We had a pool, and suddenly any toy I wanted, I could have. And it was like, wow, it was a total opposite from what I was living. And he wasn't an alcoholic or a drug addict. He was a very nice man. He had a great job. And so we moved there, and for a while things were really nice. For a while things were really nice. I don't have many memories of California. We were only out there for 2 years. What I do remember, I remember how beautiful it was. Just that area was so gorgeous. And I had made a friend there, Jennifer. And my mom and mom had become best friends out there. And so families were together all of the time. And so things were really good for a little bit. My mom was happy, it seemed, and everything seemed good. And then I don't remember exactly the time frame, but I do know that's when I was 7 years old, and like I just have good memories for a little bit of like me playing with my friend Jennifer, and that we were, the parents were party. Mom got really into cocaine. Her and her friends would get together and they would party and do cocaine and drink, and Jennifer and I would play, but we didn't know that the parents were doing cocaine or anything. We just thought they were, loud alcohol. It was nothing new, like it was nothing new. There was money now, so it made it prettier. It's the same problems, just dressed up. It's still drugs and alcohol, just better drugs and alcohol. And so, but my mom was like, she seemed happier. I could get whatever I needed, and I think that was really nice for her. And and Craig asked her to marry him, and she told me, she said the first time she married for love and the second time she married for money, and she never made any excuses that she married him so that I could have a better life.
Wow.
I think my dad knew that. I think so when I talk about Craig, I'll call him my dad.
Yeah.
When I talk about my biological father, Wayne, say my biological father, just so that there's no confusion, because Craig was my daddy. And he deserves to be called dad and not stepdad for all he did. Like, he earned that title. Sorry.
Yeah.
He just passed away in 2020, so it still feels really recent.
Yeah, it is. That is.
And I'm just so grateful that I had him in my life. I don't think that I would be who I am if he hadn't come in my life. What stability could look like, And he was so good to me. And he never, one time he had an issue where he yelled at me and he spanked me, but that was the only time that ever happened. And from then on, he would, if I got in trouble, he would tell me, hey, this is the thing and this is your punishment, and he would allow me to state my case so I could defend myself and say, well, this and this and this, and if what I said made sense, he would go, you know what, you're right, okay.
Wow.
If it didn't make sense, he would go, well, I understand you feel that way, but no, this is how it is. And I would be like, all right. So,
but that's beautiful. How validating for a child to be able to have a conversation like that. That's really, he just sounds amazing.
He was. He tried. He really was. He was awesome. Of course, there are our own issues and blocks that we had, as any parent and child will have. But he was overall awesome. And we lived it up. We went to amusement parks all of the time. And it was great. And then when I was 7, my cousin David passed away of leukemia. That was my Aunt Debbie's kid, a middle child. And that was really hard on everyone. That was the first loss. He and I were really close. He was such a sweet, sweet soul. He was so sweet. And I was really close with my cousins, because we were together every weekend. We were family. And so that was really hard. And so that was like the first loss. And then after that, things started to get rough. My mom started, she hadn't been abusive when I was younger. She had done things that felt abuse, but I don't remember her really like abusing me. There's one memory. So when I was 5, so I was born with Lyme disease, and we didn't know. And when I was 4 or 5, that's when symptoms started. And the first symptom that I had was neurological. And I remember losing like the use of my legs from the waist down suddenly.
Wow.
And it was like I could feel them, but I couldn't really control over them. And my mom took me to the doctor, but this was the 80s and they didn't know shit. And so he told her she's making it up for attention.
Oh God.
And if I could go back and like punch that doctor in the face, I would, because that put something in my mom's head that carried through the rest of my life, where now she thinks anything I'm doing for attention. Like I'm just a child that, you know. And so that's what she believed, that I was doing it for attention. And I have this one memory that I had to work on rewriting for a long time, because it really was hard. So trigger warning. We had gotten back from the doctor and I was laying on the couch and I had to go to the bathroom, but I couldn't walk. My mom was like, well, the doctor had told her I was doing it for attention. I was lying. So she became, the more that I said, I can't, I need your help, the more furious she became. And, you know, her being abused, I feel like she never had the tools of how to deal with that fury. And so she wouldn't help me. And so I had to army crawl.
Oh my God.
To the bathroom. And the whole time she's just screaming over me about how ashamed I should be of myself, that I'm going to this extent to get attention and how ridiculous it is. And that if I piss myself, she's going to beat the shit out of me. And crying. I mean, it's a horrible, it's as bad as you can imagine it, as bad as it was.
Yeah.
And so I army crawled to the bathroom, and, you know, I'm like 4 or 5. I can't get up on the toilet. I don't have that kind of strength. And so finally she's like, this is fucking ridiculous. And she like throws me on the toilet, and I go to the bathroom and I'm just like crying and telling her like, you know, I'm not making it up. And she's just furious and didn't believe me. And I'm sure that moment downloaded a lot of beliefs.
Yes.
And I had to work through, one of the big programs I had to work through with my recovery was like doing things just to get attention. Like I would dismiss myself a lot and gaslight myself because I didn't want people to think I was doing things for attention. I had to like work with like, well, it's bad to get attention. Like that's part of the reason why Joey joins me on these lives and stuff, because if I'm honest, I still deal with like,
yes,
guilt about doing anything that brings me attention.
yes.
You know, so we're all still work in progress. And And so other than that moment, like I don't remember her being particularly abusive, but as I got older and she got more and more into cocaine and PCP and eventually crack, and of course alcohol, the more violent she became. And so it started when I think I was around 7 or 8. I remember like eating, we had this we always ate dinner together. And we had a rule where I guess I used to like suck my milk down. I would drink my milk, and I was always a picky eater, or clean your plate club, right? Like that's a big thing from the 80s. Like you have to clean your fucking plate because there's starving children in Africa. And don't be wasteful. And all of the trauma that our parents, generation brought in from the Great Depression. Like that's all Great Depression trauma. Like clean your plate. And so if I didn't clean my plate, I got beat. If I drank my milk before I finished my meal, I got beat. I would get grounded for nothing. Like it just started to get real. Oh, and I have a memory too that's coming back of like talking about being 4 or 5, like in the 80s and wandering around town, like there was a time where I got the fact that my mom slept in until 1 o'clock every day because she was either working at a bar. I don't even know what job she did when I was little, but I'm assuming she worked and she was and stuff. But she would sleep until 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and I had to, as a little child, tiptoe around the apartment and be quiet and like entertain myself and feed myself and stuff like that so she could sleep. And if I woke her up, okay, so there now a memory is coming in. If I woke her up, it was fucking hell broke loose. Like I would get beat. And so I learned to tiptoe and be very quiet and deny the needs that I had.
Yes.
And so I remember around like 4 years old, being like, you know what? This. I'm gonna go out. She doesn't have to wake up, but I don't want to stay inside. And so I remember climbing the chair and unlocking the door, and I got myself dressed in mixed match clothes, and I went out into town and walked around, and I ended up walking to my house. And his mom was like, does your mom know that you're out walking around by yourself? And I was like, no, she's sleeping. And so by this time it had been hours later, because I think I went to the park and all of that, and I had a great time. And then they called my mom, and and her and my uncle came and got me, and I got in big time trouble. And so yeah, so I guess there was abuse when I was little. And yeah, Betsy says in the comments, so you learned to self-abandon early for survival. And that's exactly it. Yeah, I learned how to shut off. I learned how to shut down. I learned that my needs were not as important as others around me. I learned that my role was to please others. Like I learned all this shit. So yeah, so here we are in California. The abuse is starting to ramp up. And his I don't think he knew what to do. And I think he really did love my mom, with the capacity that he could have, and so his way of dealing it was kind of check out, and he threw himself into work. So I just remember him like working all the time. If he got work, then he was in his office, and I wasn't allowed to be in his office unless I was going to be quiet, which was very hard as a child. So he would be in his office, or he would be watching TV. So he just checked out with technology, which we talked about before. That started my whole
trigger
with technology, because I saw how it took my family away. Technology took my family away. And so I'm never going to do that. You know how we do that when we're kids, we see the thing and we go, oh, I'm never going to do that. And so I'm working through it now, but for a long time I had a lot of issues with technology. And then trying to think of like other things. I remember I had a babysitter, and I was way too little to watch this, but she watched Friday the 13th with me, or Nightmare on Elm Street. I remember having horrible nightmares about that. Oh, okay. I remember going to school. I was in 3rd grade in California, and my mom was like my worst enemy and my best friend. It was a very tumultuous, odd, challenging relationship. She was my abuser, but she was also the fiercest protector. It was like she could abuse me, but nobody else could.
Yeah.
So I have this memory where I had there was a little boy at school who touching me. And I like this, when I remember this, it makes me wish that I had told my mom about being molested when it was happening, or realized it was wrong, because I know she would have done something about it because of how she handled this situation. There was a little boy that wouldn't stop like touching my thigh. And because of what had happened with my babysitter, I was very sensitive about being touched. I didn't want anyone to touch me. And so he wouldn't stop touching me, and it became a big thing. And like my mom, I think, called the police or called some services or something. Like it was this whole thing. And like she like showed up and really protected me. I don't remember like details of it, but I remember that like she shut that shit down.
Yeah.
And the little boy got in trouble.
That must have felt somewhat nice and satisfying to have her stick up for you. Yeah.
It did. It really did. I remember just it was like, oh, she does love me.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And that was how it was with her. It was like, oh my God, why does she hate me so much? Why does she how can she be so horrible and so mean? And then it was like, oh my God, I love her so much. She's my best friend. I can tell her anything, and like she was my buddy.
Yeah.
So it was always, and I was a very strong-willed child. So the more she pushed against me, the more I pushed back. And she didn't know how to handle that. And so her way was like more abuse. So then we moved to Maryland, Germantown, Maryland. My dad, so I'm like, around 8 years old, I think, and we moved to Germantown, Maryland. And that's where I'm going to stop for today because I don't want.
Yep, getting there.
Long, and it's been and a half, so I think that's a lot. So next Friday.
Yep, I think we're good for next Friday.
Okay, so that's the thing. I am going to serve at an ayahuasca retreat in Orlando. I will be gone Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So,
so then the 21st. Or I'm
yeah,
sorry, will be the next one.
It'll be the next one. You know, or we'll figure out something. So, but the next time we do stories, I will pick up from Germantown, Maryland.
And you said you're 8 years old?
Yeah, 8 years old. So I feel, are there any questions? Do you feel like I
feel like you've gone through a lot, and I love that you were able to pull more memories out of it too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm not seeing any additional questions in the chat. Of course, any questions, y'all go ahead and please write them in right now. I think it's really interesting to me how, and this is just kind of the way our brains work, and you were so dang young, but you were just saying, I don't really remember like specific abuse from my mom. Oh, never mind. It was actually happening the whole time. And it just was so par for the course that you just kind of just filed it away.
Yeah. Yeah. And witnessing it. I mean, just everywhere. Like, yeah, so it becomes normal.
Yes.
And yeah.
And your example of love is somebody that's constantly in conflict with you.
Yeah. And that messed me up for a long time. Like when we're young like that and experience that kind of trauma, and it doesn't even have to be that extreme, but like our parents are our first model of what God is and our first model of what love looks like. Yes. And so, I mean, I tell my boys all the time, like, my priority is to have a healthy relationship with you. The way you treat me, you will treat your future partners. And the way I treat you is what you'll look for in a partner. And like dad too. But like, I take that shit so seriously because I'm like, this is where you're modeling what does love look like. And I want to make sure you have a healthy relationship when you do have a relationship. And because, yeah, being that young and having to together, like love equals rejection, love equals pain, love equals conflict. Like love isn't safe. Yeah. It's safe to receive. I'll be punished if I receive, like, so many things that I had to reprogram, yes. Which through theta, which speaking of, if you would like to book a theta session, reach out to me. They are about 3 to 4 hours long.
You just froze for me. Can you hear me?
I still frozen? Okay, I can't hear you. You need to unmute yourself.
How's that?
Okay, now I can hear you.
Okay, good. All right. So yeah, let's just wrap that up. But yeah, absolutely. Theta sessions. I mean, y'all.
Okay, hold on real quick, because the chat is, or we're streaming again. We're still streaming. We're still live on YouTube.
Okay.
Okay, there we go. All right. Okay. We are back. And so we were just saying, I wonder, okay, so the chat, I don't know if you can still chat, but what I was saying was, if you would like to book a theta session to work through beliefs, like I was just mentioning before we got started, these beliefs, if we have these beliefs from when we're young and we carry them into adulthood, our beliefs create our vibration, and our vibration will align us with what we can have in life. And so if we have certain beliefs that like love is pain or love is conflict, then that is the life that we're going to build for ourselves. And so through theta, we reprogram those beliefs. And sometimes there are vows that we take place. And so through hypnosis, we go through and we reprogram those vows and those beliefs and download programs and feelings and all of that. And it's amazing. It's changed my life, and it's, you know, all the people that I work with have had really awesome experiences with it, and I see their lives changing. And so reach out if you are interested in booking a session. They're usually about 3 hours long, but I do not shut down the flow. So we are really in it, and we're digging and we're still pulling, and there's still more there, then we go until there's nothing there. And so it can take longer. And so sessions start at $300, and it's very well worth it. So if you're interested, you can contact me through here. You can go to my website, misfit-sanctuary.com. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook, although I will be honest, Facebook is not the best place to find me. So I would reach out to Instagram, or you can email me at metaphysicalmisfit@gmail.com. And thank you, Joey, for being with me today and helping me tell my story.
Absolutely. It's my honor. Thank you. Let me share this with you.
Thank you. And thank you for everybody that has joined for the live. This live is going to be available for a short period of time before it moves over to my Patreon page. So, and then you have to join there to watch. So it's always best if you can join the live while it's happening. So tell your friends, and thank you for being here. And if you are watching this on replay, thank you for watching it. And I send everybody love and light, and I hope you have a beautiful, wonderful, amazing, happy day.
Much love. Thank you.
There's going to be a 20-second delay.